Myanmar, a country once poised to become a powerhouse in Southeast Asia, has descended into one of the most devastating civil wars of the 21st century. Rich in natural resources and blessed with a strategic location, Myanmar held the promise of a bright future. However, decades of political turmoil, ethnic divisions, and brutal military rule have turned this nation into a war-torn landscape. In 2021, a military coup plunged Myanmar into chaos, sparking a nationwide uprising that quickly escalated into a full-scale civil war involving numerous armed factions. This documentary-style account aims to shed light on the catastrophic conflict tearing Myanmar apart, exploring the roots of the violence, the key players, and the unimaginable suffering of its people. Myanmar's journey from a promising nation to a battleground of warring factions is a tale of missed opportunities and deep-seated divisions. The country gained independence from British colonial rule in 1948, inheriting a complex ethnic tapestry that included more than 135 distinct groups. Despite its potential, Myanmar struggled with internal strife almost immediately. The seeds of conflict were sown early, with ethnic minorities demanding greater autonomy and representation in a predominantly Burman-led government. The military, or Tatmadaw, gradually gained power, positioning itself as the protector of national unity. For decades, the Tatmadaw maintained control through a mix of authoritarian rule, economic mismanagement, and brutal suppression of dissent. The situation reached a boiling point on February 1, 2021, when the military led by General Min Aung Hlaing overthrew the democratically elected government of Aung San Suu Kyi. The coup ignited a wave of protests across the country, with citizens refusing to accept a return to military rule. What began as peaceful demonstrations quickly turned violent as the military responded with lethal force, pushing the nation into a downward spiral of conflict. Following the coup, resistance against the military junta intensified, with citizens forming militias and aligning with long-standing ethnic insurgencies. Myanmar's civil war is unique, not only because of its scale but also due to the sheer number of factions involved, each with distinct goals and grievances. The People's Defense Force, referred to as PDF, emerged as the most significant new player in Myanmar's civil war, formed by the National Unity Government, NUG. A shadow government composed of deposed lawmakers, the PDF quickly grew into a formidable force, comprising defectors from the military, ordinary civilians, and members of various ethnic groups. The PDF's primary goal is to overthrow the military regime and restore democratic governance. The PDF operates nationwide, often coordinating with other ethnic armed groups to challenge the military's control. Despite its rapid expansion, the PDF faces significant challenges including limited resources, lack of formal training, and the constant threat of brutal reprisals from the military. The Kachin Independence Army, KIA, one of Myanmar's oldest and most experienced armed groups, has been a key player in the conflict since 1961. Originally formed to fight for autonomy for the Kachin people in northern Myanmar, the KIA has waged a relentless insurgency against the central government for decades. The group's ability to mobilize and sustain prolonged guerrilla warfare has made it a formidable opponent. Following the coup, the KIA intensified its operations, targeting military bases and supply lines in Kachin State. The group has also received support from China, which has its own strategic interests in the region. The KIA's involvement has further complicated an already multifaceted conflict, as it battles not only the military but also other ethnic groups vying for control. The Karen National Liberation Army, also referred to as KNLA, has been fighting for Karen autonomy since 1949, making it one of the world's longest-running insurgencies. The KNLA is part of the broader K4 alliance, which includes various Karen armed groups united in their resistance against the military junta. The alliance also includes the Karenni Army, the Karenni National Progressive Party, and other factions, all sharing a common goal of self-determination. The KNLA's expertise in guerrilla warfare, combined with its deep-rooted connection to the Karen community, has allowed it to maintain a persistent threat to military forces in the southeastern Myanmar. The group's ability to disrupt military operations and protect its territories has been a major factor in the ongoing conflict. Myanmar's civil war is characterized by a series of intense, often brutal battles, each marking a significant escalation in the conflict. While the fighting is spread across the country, several key events have shaped the course of the war. Shortly after the coup, Myanmar's military launched a series of operations to suppress the burgeoning resistance. The KIA struck first, attacking military bases in Kachin State and seizing control of strategic positions. The military responded with airstrikes, artillery bombardments, and ground offensives. But the KIA's familiarity with the terrain allowed them to hold their ground. In May 2021, the newly formed PDF clashed with government forces in the northern town of Minda, marking one of the first major confrontations involving civilian fighters. The PDF's success in Minda galvanized other resistance groups, leading to a surge in recruitment and a widening of the conflict. The Karen conflict took a dramatic turn in late 2021 when KNLA forces launched coordinated assaults on military outposts along the Thai-Myanmar border. The military responded with heavy airstrikes, displacing thousands of civilians who fled into neighboring Thailand. The cross-border nature of the fighting drew international attention, highlighting the humanitarian toll of the conflict. By mid-2022, the KNLA and other ethnic groups had established control over several key areas, including towns and border crossings. The military's inability to secure these regions exposed its vulnerabilities, prompting a shift in tactics towards scorched earth campaigns and collective punishment of civilian populations. The Northern Alliance, a coalition of ethnic armed groups including KIA, MNDAA, Arakan Army, and TNLA, played a pivotal role in expanding the war into Myanmar's northern regions. By coordinating their efforts, these groups managed to inflict significant losses on government forces, capturing critical supply routes and military installations. In late 2022, the alliance launched Operation 1027, a large-scale offensive aimed at seizing control of key territories. In northern Myanmar, the operation marked one of the most coordinated assaults against the military, with multiple factions working in unison to dismantle government defenses. The military's response was brutal, involving indiscriminate bombings and mass civilian casualties, further fueling the cycle of violence. The ongoing civil war has had a devastating impact on the civilian population of Myanmar. Entire communities have been uprooted, with millions displaced internally or forced to seek refuge in neighboring countries. The military's heavy-handed tactics, including airstrikes on villages, summary executions, and the burning of homes, have left a trail of destruction across the nation. The collapse of healthcare services amid the conflict has exacerbated the suffering, particularly during the COVID-19 pandemic. Hospitals and clinics have been targeted by both military and rebel forces, leaving countless people without access to medical care. Reports of human rights abuses, including the use of child soldiers, torture, and sexual violence, are widespread, underscoring the war's profound human cost. In response to the growing insurgency, the Myanmar's military revived its notorious four cuts strategy, a counter-insurgency tactic aimed at cutting off food, funds, information, and recruits from insurgent groups. The strategy, first employed in the 1960s, involves targeting civilian populations suspected of supporting rebel forces through collective punishment. Villages are often burned to the ground, residents are forcibly relocated, and access to humanitarian aid is blocked. Despite its brutality, the four cuts strategy has largely failed to stem the tide of resistance. Instead, it has further alienated the civilian population, drawing more people into the arms of the insurgents. The military's failure to adapt its tactics to the evolving nature of the conflict has left it increasingly isolated. As the war drags on, the military's hold on power appears tenuous, with desertions and defections eroding its ranks. The regime's inability to deliver basic services or maintain control over large swaths of the country has raised questions about its long-term viability. As the conflict enters its third year, the landscape of Myanmar's civil war continues to shift. New alliances are formed and old ones fracture, as various factions jostle for power and territory. The PDF remains the largest opposition force, but it is by no means unified. Internal divisions, Resource constraints and competing agendas pose significant challenges to the anti-military coalition.
Meanwhile, ethnic armed groups like the KIA and the KNLA have expanded their influence, often at the expense of weaker factions. The war has also seen the emergence of smaller, more radical groups, some of which have carried out attacks against civilians and rival insurgents. The chaotic nature of the fighting has made it difficult for any single group to gain a decisive advantage.
The international community's response to Myanmar's civil war has been muted, with sanctions, diplomatic condemnations, and limited humanitarian aid failing to alter the course of the conflict. Regional powers like China and India have complex interests in Myanmar, balancing their strategic concerns with the realities of the ongoing violence. China, in particular, has been accused of supporting certain ethnic groups while maintaining ties with the military regime. This dual approach has allowed Beijing to hedge its bets, ensuring it retains influence regardless of which side emerges victorious. Meanwhile, ASEAN's attempts at mediation have largely stalled, hindered by the group's non-interference policy and internal divisions. Western countries have imposed targeted sanctions against Myanmar's military leaders, but these measures have had limited impact on the ground. The junta remains firmly in control of key economic resources, including natural gas exports, which provide critical revenue streams. As the war drags on, Myanmar's isolation deepens, with little hope of a negotiated settlement in sight. The future of Myanmar is deeply uncertain. The country is trapped in a vicious cycle of violence, with no clear path to peace. The military's intransigence, combined with the fractured nature of the opposition, makes any form of reconciliation seem distant. Ethnic and religious divides continue to shape the conflict, with each group pursuing its own vision of Myanmar's future.
For now, the war shows no signs of abating. The military's reliance on heavy-handed tactics has only hardened resistance, while the opposition's lack of unity prevents it from mounting a coherent challenge. As Myanmar's economy collapses and its people suffer, the nation's prospects grow ever darker.
Myanmar's catastrophic civil war stands as a stark reminder of the dangers of unchecked military power and deep-rooted societal divisions. What was once a nation with the potential to lead in Asia has become a tragic example of how internal conflict can devastate a country's future. The war's impact on Myanmar's people, infrastructure, and social fabric is profound, with long-lasting consequences that will shape the country for generations. The road ahead for Myanmar is fraught with challenges. Peace remains elusive, and the possibility of negotiated settlement seems remote. The international community, while condemning the violence, has yet to offer a viable path forward. For the people of Myanmar, the hope of a peaceful, prosperous future has been replaced by the grim reality of a nation at war with itself.